And hi, everyone. My name is Cyrielle Filias. I'm the lead for program learning and development at SAREC. And on behalf of all the SAREC team and our sponsored RBC Future Launch, I welcome you to today's webinar. And today we are delighted to start a new webinar series focused on skills development, practical work experience, networking, and mentorship for youth across Canada. And for each webinar, we'll be joined by different experts who will share resources and insight on this area. And we're pleased to start the series today with Valentina Castillo Cifuentes, who will share findings from the RBC Young People and Economic Inclusion longitudinal study with us. But before starting, I want to pay respect to the original people of the territory upon which I physically sit and acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Toronto. And for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississauga Anishinaabe of New Credits. I acknowledge that the Indigenous people are the original steward and caretaker of this land and water. And as we would like to take our land acknowledgement as opportunity to share resources toward learning and reconciliation, and with the Orange Shore Day fast approaching on September 30th, we wanted to share a video produced by the Orange Shore Society and presented by Phyllis Webstard, who explained the origin of Orange Shore Day and residential schooling. So I encourage you to click on the link that my colleague will share on the chat so you can open a your browser and watch video at your convenience. And as always, I invite anyone else who wish to share a resource toward reconciliation to do so in the chat. Now, I would like to take a few moments to introduce you to SAREC and share some housekeeping note with you. So for those of you who don't know us yet, SAREC is a charitable organization focusing on education and research in career counseling and career development in Canada. We found projects that create new knowledge and develop innovative resources. And we have main programs. So Canexus, the Canadian Career Development Conference, which will happen on a hybrid format from January 27 to 29 in Ottawa and virtually. And with our early bird rate currently available on our website, and the CareerWise.ca website, which featured the top news and review in the field with a French version called Orientation.ca, and the Canadian Journal of Career Development, which is free to access. So you can learn more about all of our SAREC work and resources by visiting our website at sarec.ca. And also, as we always inform our learning initiative based on your feedback and needs, we will encourage you to share your learning need for 2025 and beyond in the survey that we'll be sending at the conclusion of this series. So thank you in advance for taking the time to provide us with your input. Now, just a couple of housekeeping notes for today's webinar. So during the session, you can use the Zoom chat to interact with the audience, and I can see that some of you have already used it, so that's good. We encourage you also to use the Q&A function to pose your question to our presenter. We'll have a Q&A session at the end where Valentina will address your question. And also, please note that this webinar is being recorded. So we'll provide you with a copy of the recording, which will include the French subtitle and the slide, and will be sent to you by an email in about a week from now. Lastly, AI-generated caption and subtitle are available in several languages for this live session. So to enable them, you can click on the CC button located at the bottom of your Zoom windows and select Show Subtitle to view subtitle in real time. Now, I would like to thank our sponsor, RBC Future Launch, for this special partnership. And thanks to their contribution, we have been able to offer this series accessible at no cost to all of you. So I'm happy to say a few words about their initiative. In 2017, RBC unveiled its largest ever commitment to Canada's future and created RBC Future Launch, a 10-year, $500 million initiative to help young people gain access to the skills, job experience, networking solution, and mental well-being support and services they need to be ready for the future of work. So RBC Future Launch goes beyond just financial investment and partner with government, educator, youth-serving organization, and companies large and small to better understand the challenges facing young Canadians to create impactful solutions. They offer access to hundreds of programs, tools, and resources, so you can learn more about all of their work at rbc.com/future-launched. Now, I am thrilled to introduce you to our first presenter today, Valentina Castillo Cifuentes. Valentina is the research manager at the Youth and Innovation Project, where she leads key research programs, including the RBC Youth, People and Economic Inclusion Study. With a strong background in social impact measurement and youth program evaluation, Valentina holds a Master in Environmental Studies from the University of Waterloo and a sociology degree from Universidad Diego Portales in Chile. We're thrilled to have Valentina with us to share results and insight from their research initiative. So let's not wait any longer to have you start your presentation. Over to you, Valentina.
Thank you so much, Cyril, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen right now. Perfect. And if you can please confirm that you can see my presentation, that would be great.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll get started. So today, as Cyril mentioned, I am going to present the insights from our RBC Future Launch Young People Economic Inclusion Longitudinal Study. So just to share that, I'll share a little bit about the Youth and Innovation Project, details about the longitudinal study, how we implemented the study, and then our key findings around education, employment, and thriving at work. And then stay until the end because we're going to share some recommendations for funders, policymakers, and employers that support young people. So, as Cyril mentioned, I'm the research manager at the Youth and Innovation Project. We are based at the University of Waterloo in the Faculty of Environment. Our goal is really to understand and amplify the impact that young people ages 15 to 25 have on organizations, communities, and systems. We are an intergenerational team, so we not only talk about young people's impact and how to meaningfully engage them, but we really live and breathe that within our own work. We have an incredible youth advisory council that has been crucial to develop this research. And I'll be sharing a little bit of kind of the process of our intergenerational team has played in this research as well. So I joined the Youth and Innovation Project when I was 26, so I was just aging out of our definition of a young person. I still think I fit within the other definitions of youth, but I was brought in to help with the design and implementation of the RBC Young People and Economic Inclusion longitudinal study. And so Cyril brought you up to speed of what RBC Future Launch is, but I'll quickly repeat that RBC Future Launch funds organizations that implement youth employment programs, and including ones that focus on mental health and well-being. And since it's a huge investment, so $500 million over 10 years, we really wanted to understand what were the impacts of RBC funded programs on young participants and the implications on the Canadian economy. So what I'll share today with you are insights into young Canadians' current reality with a focus on employment, insights into the future of work of young Canadians and their perspectives, and recommendations for those who work to support young people's career journeys based on the findings that we have. So I'll share quickly how the longitudinal study works. So young participants go through RBC funded programs. They are very diverse. It could be a workshop about building the resume, or there could be an internship. So they're very, very diverse programs. At the end of the programs, young people complete a post-program evaluation survey. That survey focuses on skills that participants learn in those programs. We added at the end of the survey an opt-in question for participants to participate in our longitudinal study. So a year after they completed the program and answered the post-program evaluation survey, we send them our first longitudinal survey. So it's a year after they completed the program. We follow them for 3 years. So a year after they receive our first longitudinal study survey, they receive our second survey, which is the same survey. And then we send a third survey a year after that. Once participants have completed those 3 surveys, we will interview them, and then we will gather more insights about their career path. As of September 2024, over 26,000 young participants have opted into the study. So really, we have a huge pool of participants interested in being part of our study. I also wanted to mention that we conducted a pilot study in 2022. We tested the survey that we are using, and we also tested incentives. So in the incentives test that we did, we realized that when we offer young participants $10 for participating in the survey, we got higher response rates. So right now, every participant that answered the survey gets $10. We calculated those $10 based on living wage. So when we designed the study, living wage was about $20 to $23. We calculated that the survey was fairly long and that might take half an hour for participants to answer the survey. And so we decided to give them $10. We know now that the survey takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, but we still giving participants at $10. And that has really gave us great results when it comes to engaging young participants in studies. So what I'm showing you today are the results of the first cohort of young participants. So these participants completed a RBC-funded program between May 2021 and July 2022. So we collected data both in English and French between May 15 to August 30th, 2023. We sent over 4,000 invitations. So it's the first cohort of participants out of those 26,000 that have opted in. We got about 16% response rate. In the pilot study, when we tested those $10, we got 12% response rate, but we got higher response rate in the first cohort of longitudinal participants, which we think is great. It's very difficult to engage young people in research studies, and then to keep them throughout the years, it's even harder. So we're really happy with the response rates that we got. So today, I'm going to show you analysis and group comparisons for demographic characteristics of young participants, and I'm showing you results whether they are relevant or statistically significant. I'm showing you also results in comparison with the Statistics Canada Labour Force Survey. So this is the public data used to date. And I just wanted to share that these results are not longitudinal. These are just the first survey that cohort 1 of participants responded to. So this is just the first survey that participants responded. In future years, we will have longitudinal data to share, and we're very excited to say that I was just talking with Cyril before that we were continuing to collect data, and in fact, our cohort 1 that answered the survey last year answered survey 2 this past July, and we will be able to share some of those results in the coming years, but for now it's just survey 1. And also wanted to share that we developed this study in consultation with our Youth Advisory Council, but also with partners from RBC, so RBC Future Launch grantees. And we also had insights from several colleagues at the University of Waterloo, including the Work Learning Institute, the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, and the Waterloo Institute for Complexity and Innovation. So we really had a great collaboration to develop this study. So first, I wanted to share with you who are these longitudinal study participants. And you will see a little bit of comparison with the labor force survey. So to kind of compare a little bit with the Canadian population as well. So the first demographic context that I'm going to share is we have 62% of our participants are females. And we know that females tend to answer more online surveys. So this is something that there's a lot of academic studies around that. But still, people don't know why females tend to answer more online surveys. But these results are here reflected in our study as well. In terms of age, we have a really great distribution of age of the participants. So we have 27% of adolescents, ages 15 to 19, 27% of transition youth, 20 to 24, 31% of young adults, 25 to 34, and 15% of 35 and older. Most of our participants come from Ontario, followed by Alberta and British Columbia. We have a slightly larger representation of Black, Asian, and Indigenous participants than the Canadian population. We know that RBC Future Launch has really had a focus of targeting these populations, and we see it reflected here, and we see it as a positive trend. 37% of our participants were born outside of Canada. 66% of them are currently studying either informal or informal education. 40% have completed high school or less education. 44% have completed a college or university degree. 67% are working. And of those that are working, 65% are working full-time and 35% work part-time. And then we have 25% of participants that reported 1 or 2 disabilities. And we know that that's also about the same percentage of the Canadian population. So overall, we think that the first cohort of longitudinal study is fairly representative of the Canadian population, but there's still a lack of participants from Quebec, and therefore is also we have few participants from that speak French. So we know that the Canadian population of Quebec is 20%, and we have 6% here. We know that RBC Future Launch funds programs in Quebec. However, there are some issues around getting participants to answer the post-program evaluation survey. So therefore, participants can't opt in into our longitudinal study. The surveys are offered both in English and French. So we're trying to figure out how to get more participants from Quebec to answer the survey. And there's also a lack of participants from the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and Nunavut. There are no programs being funded from those areas, and we know that also from the labor force survey, there's no data from those areas either. We know that geographically it's harder to get answers from those areas, but we know that efforts should be made to ensure that youth employment, the youth employment context in these regions is understood. So we're hoping that in upcoming reports and as the longitudinal study kind of develops, we're able to provide more insights from these participants. The second section that I wanted to share with you, it's around education and practical work experience. So again, you will see a little bit of this comparison between our participants and the labor force survey. So the first data that we got, it's around educational achievement. So we saw that transition youth, ages 20 to 24, and young adults, ages 25 to 34 in the longitudinal study are more likely to attend university compared to the labor force survey participants. So basically, RBC participants within those ages are more educated than the general Canadian population in the same ages. So these are statistically significant results, and we have some questions. We don't have a lot of answers to some of these questions, but we think that it's really important for us to reflect and to give you the opportunity to reflect as well around youth programs. So we don't really know if participants are, because they participated in a youth program and are now pursuing more education, and maybe that's why they're more educated, or because they were more educated to begin with. So again, we know that young people facing barriers often have a lack of access to technology and networks, which may otherwise allow them to access youth programs. So we really need to ask ourselves, what can be done to ensure that less educated young people are also reached by and able to participate in youth programs? So again, we don't have the answers, but we really think that this is a trend that we should be watching and explore further as the longitudinal study progresses. The next piece is around work integrated learning. So in the longitudinal study, we have fewer younger participants that had the chance to participate in work integrated learning compared to the Canadian graduates in 2020. So you see in our study, we have 43%, and the Canadian graduates in 2020 was 46%. So it's a little bit of a decrease there. Of the young participants in our study that had that work integrated learning opportunity, only 58% were paid and 42% were not. So when we look into the Canadian graduate survey, we also saw that only 40% of these participants were paid for these opportunities. So one of the things that we were wondering is, first, how has the pandemic impacted the availability of work integrated learning opportunities? So we're wondering if this is something that we will continue to see as the study progresses. And the other thing that it's really important to us is that a recent study from our colleagues at the Work Integrated Learning, at the Work Learning Institute of the University of Waterloo, indicated that there are structural and non-structural barriers that equity in the serving groups, including international students, women, Indigenous students, LGBTQ+ students, and students with disability face when it comes to participating in work integrated learning opportunities. So we think that it's worth monitoring these numbers and see how it develops throughout the years. The next section is around on-the-job training and professional development. So we found in the longitudinal study that professional development opportunities decrease with age. So as workers get older, they get less professional development. Female young participants tend to have more access to professional development opportunities, but are most likely to participate from 0 to 10 hours. Then male young participants are given slightly less opportunities for professional development, but when they do so, they do it for more than 10 hours per year. And these results are also statistically significant. So when we were discussing among our team, we wanted to further explore and understand what was happening around professional development in Canada, but we found no public data around it. I think the one that I found was from 1996 or something. So it was really old data. So first, we think that it's important that research is done around professional development. And also, we really think it's important to consider how we can increase the number of hours of on-the-job training and professional development for women, while we ensure that we empower young women to advocate for themselves in the workplace and ask for the support that they need to continue to learn and advance in their careers. So really, I think it's an opportunity for us to reflect, why do you think that women participate in fewer training hours despite having more access? So I think it's a great opportunity here to reflect around that. The third section, it's around employment. So we are presenting results in also some of them in comparison with the longitudinal study, but this section is not necessarily related around traditional employment measurements such as unemployment data. We focus this question on understanding young people's workplace context and their financial well-being as well. But actually, I'm going to start with the hard data. So, and this is one of the most interesting for us as well. So what we saw in the longitudinal study, it's data around NEET youth. So youth not in education, employment, or training. We know that these young people are one of the most vulnerable right now. They're not in education, they're not in employment as well. So in the longitudinal study, we have 1.3% of NEET youth, compared to the labor force survey, which is 8.7%. And this data was, when we did the study and when we did this comparison, was with data from the labor force survey in February 2024. So we know now, but in May 2024, the NEET rate, it's actually 11%, so it has increased. And we know now that youth unemployment is 13.5%. So it's really concerning data. And so one of the things that we were thinking and asking as well ourselves is like, NEET youth, we know that they are underrepresented in the longitudinal study. Is it likely that NEET youth are not being reached by youth programs? We don't really know. And I think it's important that if you are an organization that run youth program, is to really ask yourself, are we reaching the youth that need it the most? And if so, how can we do a better job at reaching these young people? We also know that NEET youth, it affects NEET are overrepresented in Black and South Asian youth. So we think it's really important to keep watching these trends and see how it deploys over the years as well. The other question is around job precariousness. So we ask young people if they were working in more than one job. And one of the things that we saw is that female, Indigenous, Latin America, and Filipino young participants are more likely to hold multiple jobs than their peers. So male, Arab, Black, Asian, and white young people. So these may indicate that this group experienced greater job precariousness than others. These results are not statistically significant, but these are trends that are important for us to watch. The labor force survey actually indicates that in general, the rate of multiple job holders has slightly decreased in 2016, which indicates positive trends in the precariousness of employment for young people, but things have changed in the recent years as well. So that's why we think that this trend is important for us to watch. But despite this improvement, our results show that there is a disparity around gender and ethnicity. So there is a need to continue study and conversation about the limitations and opportunities that the labor market offers to young people depending on their gender and ethnicity as well. The next slide is around working arrangements. So when it comes to working remotely in a hybrid environment or working entirely in person, we found that more adolescents will prefer to work in person, so we have 37%, than any other of age groups, so 21% or less. And then we have that transition youth, ages 20 to 24, have a higher preference for hybrid work than any other age group. And these results are also statistically significant. So one of the conversations that we have with our team is that sometimes we might think that young people, is particularly around ages 15 to 19, they're on their phones all the time. They are connected all the time. They're more tech savvy, and therefore they might be more comfortable in online settings. And we really think it will be interesting to see how these results might change over the upcoming years. Maybe this was something particularly that we will see in cohort 1, or maybe things will change. But one of the things that when we presented these results back in January 2024 at the Connexus conference, we had a great youth panel with us, and we asked them what they will prefer, if they will prefer to work in person, if they will prefer to work online. And they said that they really miss being in person, and that the experience doing it in school online wasn't the best, and that they were very eager to be in person. And this is something that I see with my younger colleagues, that they really want to be in the office, and they really see the value of being in person. And even myself, when I actually graduated from my master's degree, it was during the pandemic. And so my first job was just online. And I really wish I had that in-person interaction. So I know this is just speaking from my personal experience, from my colleagues and the youth that we had in our panel. But that's why we're curious to see if it's particularly for a certain group of young people, or if this will change. One data that I wanted to share also from the WorkLearn Institute is that they back up these findings. So they also found that young workers favor hybrid work over fully remote or fully in person. They also reported that young people had higher job satisfaction when they were given the option for hybrid work. And the WorkLearn Institute emphasized that the importance of providing young people who are often new to our workplace with at least some in-person time, because that will allow young people to build relationships and learn about organizational culture. And when it's combined with in-person work, working from home can also offer benefits. So it gives the opportunity for young people to develop self-management and also independent thinking. And I think the way, I don't know what your work arrangement is, but I know that when you have those two, like the option that you are working by yourself at home and then the opportunity to collaborate with a team, I think that combination it works really well. But again, these are coming from personal experience as well. The next slide is around financial situation. And unfortunately, this is common knowledge. We know that at a global level, even women are consistently paid less than men. So the results in the longitudinal study are not different. So across all age groups, female young participants are paid less than male young participants. But what was really interesting, and we had a great debates with my colleagues when we were reviewing the data, is that 52% of female young participants make under 30,000 per year, while 42% of male young participants make under 30,000 per year. So the biggest difference in salary between men and women, or female and male young participants, wasn't at the highest level. It's actually at the bottom. So we thought that was really, really interesting and also really concerning. So we consulted, we have an economist in our team, Dr. Ana Ferrer. When we asked her why the disparity was so big at the bottom of the earnings, and she highlighted that a larger proportion of less educated females tend to occupy roles in sectors such as hospitality and retail, where compensations tend to be lower. Meanwhile, less educated males tend to occupy roles in the trade and apprentice sector, such as construction, electricity, carpentry, and plumbing, where the pay is higher. So one of the things that we were asking, if income discrepancies between females and males are persisting in younger generations, how can we address it? And I think we got very passionate about this, and we did more research, and we found that there is evidence that financial literacy for women can make a significant difference that impacts their financial planning, inclusion in the labor market, and empowering them to control their financial well-being. So again, tailoring youth programs to engage women in financial literacy may be a starting point to address some of these gaps. And the other thing that we found that there's a lot of support for campaigns around women in STEM, and we know that these have worked great, but also maybe supporting women in trades campaign, which there are many at a provincial level, may also help address this gap. This will not only increase gender diversity in the trades, but also will provide an opportunity for women with less education to access higher paying jobs. So we think that those results were really, really interesting. Our next section is around thriving at work. And before I give you results of around thriving at work, when we were designing the survey, we really were questioning what is thriving at work. And we had several discussions with the RBC Foundation team, with our partner advisory council of what thriving at work meant. And we agreed that there's multiple definitions of thriving at work. And so what we decided to do for this section of the surveys, we included a variety of different questions to capture a full picture of whether young Canadians are thriving at work or not. So this includes asking questions about life satisfaction, balance between work and personal life, feeling value at work, resilience also within the workplaces, and collaboration between decision makers in the workplace. So the first results that I'm sharing with you, it's that when we ask young people how satisfied they were with their lives and with their work and work-life balance, generally they said that they reported high levels of satisfaction. But when we actually did some analysis by age, we found that transition youth, ages 20 to 24, and young adults, ages 25 to 34, are less satisfied with their lives, less satisfied with their work-life balance, and indicated that they are less likely to have developed reliable ways to relax under pressure than adolescents, 15 to 19, and then adults, so 35 plus. However, transition youth, so the same youth that feels less satisfied, and young adults feel more value at their jobs than adolescents, so ages 15 to 19 and adults. So we thought that these results were really, really interesting. And so these results are not statistically significant, so we can really make a statement. But we were wondering if transition youth and young adults are sacrificing their life satisfaction and work-life balance for their work. And again, these are some of the conversations that we had around our team, but it seems like for us, it was that young people, ages 15 to 19, maybe some of them might still be living with their parents. They may be a little bit more sheltered. And when you actually come out of your house with your parents, ages 20 to 24, and then 25 to 34, it's a little bit harder. And particularly around 20 to 24, we know that there is a housing crisis, and that's really hard for a lot of us still. And then on top of that, we know that there's a lot of support of youth programs for young people ages 15 to 19, but there are actually less programs supporting ages 20 to 24. So it might be that if we see that if this trend to continue in the study, it might be a good opportunity for also rethink how resources to support these young participants. So we think it's really important also, and also it really pose that question of how can we support these young people better. So it gives us a lot of opportunity of thinking here and reflect as well. The next section is it's also thriving at work, but we actually got a scale, an academic scale around thriving at work. And maybe Cyril, if at the end we can share a link of the full report of this research that I'm presenting today, you will see that we put that scale together. So the scale measures if young people feel like they're valued at their jobs, if they feel integrated, if they feel like they're learning. So we mix all those together and make a scale of thriving at work. So it's a particular scale. And when we run some analysis, we found that immigrants are less likely to be thriving at work compared to those who are born in Canada. And again, these results might not be new, but we ask what can be done to ensure that immigrants are thriving at work. And so we know that immigrants in Canada face barriers to employment, promotion, and social integration. Research also tells us that it's crucial that immigrants develop relationships with coworkers and supervisors to enhance social integration and create a supporting environment that can help them also understand organizations' norms and values, while also fostering a sense of belonging. And when I was going through the list of questions that of some of you may have asked when you register for this webinar, there were questions around how can we integrate newcomers and how can we integrate diverse youth. And as an immigrant myself, and I know many of you may also be, and also more than half of our team was trained outside of Canada. And I know that, and I know this is a personal anecdote as well, but I know we bring a lot to the table. And so sometimes it's a matter of just one person giving you that opportunity. So maybe if you're questioning, maybe, and you have young people that are diverse or are newcomers and you don't know how to engage them, I think it might be important that maybe you are that person. Like, give them the opportunity, give them real responsibility, and trust the work that they will do. And I think it's really important that we create that safe environment for them as well. The last piece of thriving at work, it's around intergenerational collaboration. So given that workplaces are largely intergenerational by nature, and these are places where we try to solve complex problems, we decided to include questions around intergenerational collaboration in the study. So we asked young people whether they had the chance to share their ideas with decision makers in their workplace, including with their boss, the organization's senior leadership, the organization's board of directors, and any other decision maker. So if they responded that they had those opportunities, we then asked them if they think that they were heard, taken seriously, and whether they think that decision makers will act on their ideas. So the results say that although most young participants of all ages lack opportunities to share their ideas with decision makers, they still express confidence that their ideas will be heard and taken seriously, but they are less optimistic that decision makers will act on their ideas. And these results that we see here in this longitudinal study, we have also tested these questions in our other study in the volunteering sector, and the results are the same. In fact, we repeated these questions in a global study with the World Economic Forum, and we found exactly the same results. So we see that young people, if they have opportunities to share with decision makers, they are positive about being heard, positive about being taken seriously, but when it comes to decision makers actually acting on their ideas, they feel less positive. So we know that there is the context in Canada of an aging population. So how can employers create more opportunities for intergenerational collaboration? I think it's crucial that not only employers today create workplaces that are generationally diverse, but they also facilitate the collaboration between different age groups. So it's important that young people have unique skills and abilities that are important to leverage. But when you combine them with expertise of older workers, workplaces can find better solutions to critical problems. And I think this is something that we really do at the Youth and Innovation Project. We are a very diverse team, and when we have these conversations, even analyzing the data, we have very senior research people, and then we have research assistants, and we all get together. We really find really interesting solutions and really interesting analysis. And it happens the same when we bring the Youth Advisory Council. So I think it's a really unique experience. And then I will recommend to you to try it at your organization as well. So recommendations, I have spoken a lot, but we have recommendations for funders, policymakers, and employers. So I'll start with recommendations for funders and policymakers. So we need to make sure that there is an increased focus of youth-focused programs that are serving youth. We also think that there is a need for an increased focus of youth programs that serve transition youth, particularly around ages 20 to 24. We know that there's more support needed for immigrant young people to ensure that they are thriving at work. And we also need to focus on addressing the gender-related wage gap. And I know this is very broad, but we talk at some points in the presentation around, for example, financial literacy and making youth programs that focus on empowering young people, young women particularly, around these topics. We know that we need more research to better understand trends in work integrated learning. We need more research to better understand the gender gap in on-the-job training and professional development, because there's not much data that at least I was able to find when we conducted this research. More research is needed to better understand NEET youth participation. We actually added some questions in the longitudinal study to better measure NEET youth and when they were without job and when they were without education. So we're also doing work around that. It's important that also youth programs should ensure that transition youth ages 20 to 24 NEET youth, young people in Quebec, Northwest Territories, and Yukon, as well French speakers are served. We know that this is challenging, but we need to start somewhere. So these are some of our recommendations. And then for employers, we think it's really important to leverage the interest demonstrated by younger employees to work in person or in a hybrid environment. There's a great opportunity there. We think there's a need to create more opportunities for intergenerational collaboration, particularly in the context of an aging population. I think this is crucial. And we have heard a lot of conversations about people having a lot of stigma around young people and having different work ethics. So I think once you actually get to work with young participants, understand their abilities, and give them the support to really have a meaningful impact in your organization, you will see that how easier is that intergenerational collaboration. And then ensure young women are given opportunities to participate in more hours and on-the-job training and professional development. And again, empowering young women to maybe advocate for themselves in the workplace and ask for those opportunities as well. We know that more support is needed for transition youth ages 20 to 24 and young adults ages 20 to 34. We need to ensure that these employees are thriving at work, so they need more support there. And also more support is needed for young immigrant employees to ensure that they're thriving at work. So those are the current recommendations. Please visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter. You will find in our website this report, but also other reports that we have conducted in the past. And then we will have more data and more analysis coming in next year as we have collected more data on the longitudinal study. And then, yeah, we're really, really excited and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Valentina, for this great presentation. I'm happy to say that indeed we receive a lot of questions. So I'm trying to, I took some notes and trying to go over them. And as you said, Valentina, and to all of you, we'll be sharing the full report. So I will go through some questions, but I'm sure you will also get more information in the full report. We got a lot of questions around, youth and needs. So just trying to combine several of the questions we had, like people were curious, how does your founded programming prioritize NEETs, not in education, employment, and training youth, particularly from those under-resourced communities? So are there any partnership with local organization or support for families, especially those with teenagers, to better reach and engage these demographics?
Yeah, so this is a question that I think people from RBC might be better to answer than me, but we know that when we presented these results to RBC, they were really concerned and they were going to make efforts to ensure that organizations were targeting NEET youth, and if they were receiving any funding from RBC or that were particularly to focus on NEET youth. So I think that they are making efforts to do that, and so we hope that that kind of plays out and that we can see those efforts in the upcoming years as well.
Thank you. Kathleen was asking, you mentioned data was collected from more individual in minority community, Black and Indigenous than before. Just curious by how much and how did you achieve that? And what was the before? And do you have a goal for how much you would like to see that statistics raised in the future?
Yeah, so I think what the percentage that we have was around 10 to 15%, and I think the Indigenous population in Canada is about 2 to 3%. So we see that it's more than what we have in the longitudinal study. I don't know exactly what's the reach from RBC, but we know that we have a overrepresentation there compared to the Canadian population. So we hope that it stays the same. And obviously, what the efforts that RBC has, it kind of plays out into what we see in our research. And so we know that that was an effort that they had, and we were happy to see that played out in the data that we collected. So. That's
Indeed.
great.
Romali is asking, is your definition of immigrant different from other newcomers, international student, temporary worker, and refugee experience more challenges than immigrant, I suppose? So do you have any data around this?
So how we measure what we consider as an immigrant?
Your definition of immigrants versus other.
Yeah, so I think we consider the people have arrived in the last 5 years, and we have a division around visa. So we measure international students, immigrants that are coming through economic streams, and so there's the full survey and how we measure the immigration. It's in the survey. So if you share the link to the report, you will be able to fully see that exactly how it is. But we kind of group them all together when we do the analysis in the presentation, but we have a really great division of when they arrive and also which streams they have arrived as well.
And maybe this data is like also available in the full report, but in the same vein, someone was asking, like, have you considered checking the correlation of your respondent to the level of education? As you mentioned, you have a good representation of visible minority. If they are an immigrant, they are most likely highly educated because you cannot immigrate to Canada if you do not have higher education, or those kind of crossing.
We are actually focusing on that in the next report. So we don't have that data for this year, but we will focus. We are doing actually extra analysis on that next year because I think it will be very, very important given the context. So stay tuned for that.
I was about to say, stay tuned for the second report. I also saw some comment at the beginning of the presentation. Some people were asking whether you got some data from Manitoba.
From Manitoba, yes, we did. So we show the main provinces, and I also saw a question around if we got data from Nova Scotia and east part of Canada. We did get some data, but it's I will say it's like about 10%, a little bit less than, between 5 and 10%. I think maybe Manitoba it's about 5-6%, if I remember correctly. So yeah, we did get data. We just mentioned the main ones, and I know also for the second report we will have data divided by provinces as well, so we will be able to give that insights too.
Thank you. I also note another question. I will find it back, this one. In the meantime, I saw like a comment from Rebecca. Do you think the study as branded, sponsored by RBC, will be off-putting to certain population of youth, less likely to agree to participate?
Yeah, we actually, when we did the pilot study, we conducted a focus group with participants, and we asked them, because we sent, in the pilot study, we tested also different emails. So we tested an email without any branding from the Youth and Innovation Project and from RBC. And then we tested an email with it's the branding is mainly from the Youth and Innovation Project in collaboration with RBC. And what we found with the young participants in those conversations, that they actually prefer that the emails was branded, mainly from the University of Waterloo, because it's like an organization, it gives more reputation. So we decided to go that route because they were positive towards that. And so the emails that we send, it's coming from the University of Waterloo. The study is with the University of Waterloo in collaboration with RBC, obviously. And so we actually haven't received any complaints or anything around that. We actually have had very positive responses around it. So,
that's an interesting to share. Someone in the chat was asking, what type of career guidance intervention do these participants get, if any?
Interesting. I think somebody from RBC might be also better to answer some of these questions. But I know that one of the pillars of RBC Future Launch is around career development. And so there might be some organizations that do a great job providing that support. But I don't know all the programs that they fund. So I think somebody from RBC might be better suited at some point, or you can ask them as well.
And the good news is, like, we have a 3-part series, so we'll be joined in the second and third session with RBC members. We'll address those questions.
Yeah.
So let me look. Thanks so much, everyone, for your great engagement. It's very good to see that. Has there been study on how many youth at all levels are employed in jobs that are utilizing their post-secondary study? I work supporting mental health clients and seeing a lot of people, although maybe employed, that are not in a role utilizing their education, and that affect a gig economy. And there has been a scene on mental health.
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think I saw also some questions in the registration around what is important for young people to feel like that they are that there's a lot of anxiety and like mental health issues, and I think particularly around career options and what they choose. And I think one of the things that we see the most, and that we speak with even with my colleagues and other young people at the youth our youth advisory council, is that even though you may have chosen a wrong career path or something that you're not excited, what we see the common factor is that if young people feel like they're doing something meaningful and something that is important and something that might make a change in the organization, I think people tend to go through towards that, and I think that's key. I think that there's a lot of great opportunity for that, and that's why we think that intergenerational collaboration is so important. Because when they feel like they are making a change, when they feel like they're having an impact on the organization, they are more motivated, and that's something that I don't know if it exactly answered the question, but I think that's kind of where maybe the conversation can be. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. We also had like a question that came actually a couple of time, but I also want to just highlight that we got several comments during your presentation of people who have seen their like program funding being cut or suspended for several months, and it seems that it happened to several people. So just curious if these situation came out during the study with your work.
Yeah, we're actually, I'm sharing more information about the study we're conducting. We're actually conducting a study with later with the programs with the organizations that are funded by RBC to actually understand better how their programs are implemented in design and what challenges they're facing. And so then we might able to collect that information and kind of link it with the participants information. So that will be really interesting to see that later in the future. But yeah, because we don't necessarily work directly with a lot of the funder with the RBC partners, but we do have conversations with them, and we unfortunately hear that there's a lot of challenges around funding, and it's so crucial right now because like youth unemployment is so high. And they need support more than ever, and like seeing those fundings cut, it's a bit heartbreaking. And so we'll see how that plays out later also, and that's the beauty of having a longitudinal study, which is rare, is that we are able to see those changes in throughout the year. So probably might see some of that later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to see the potential positive effect of some initiative along the way, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Someone was also asking, like, from the work you have done, do you have any recommendation on the direction for the type of support resources youth will need to be successful in the workforce post-graduation, and main skills desire across the board in today's workforce?
I think one of the most important skills is, and I know there's a lot of conversation around it, but it's the ability of to adapt, right? To adapt to different contexts and different workplaces. So I know that everybody will have hard skills, and I know that those are important, but being able to understand that those skills can be transferable in different areas. So I think and I think this is kind of opens to a conversation when there's like a lack of resources, you also need to adapt. So we may go into that phase, so we might be forced to adapt, and so I think that will give an opportunity to pivot some of the career choices, and so giving that opportunity, and then again making sure that young people are valued for their digital skills, and then also have the support to kind of expand their abilities in their work. So I think it's a combination of having soft skills, a combination of making sure that all their workers support young participants and allow them to kind of flourish and have and I can bring their full potentials in the workplace.
Thank you for the input. Jenna was asking, how can students get access to the survey? Can it be sent to me as I work with people from 16 to retirement? So curious on how they access.
The survey is in the report, but if you feel free to send me an email, I can share my email in the chat if people want to connect as well.
Yeah, and feedback on this, a lot of comments. Yes, we will share the recording and a copy of the presentation, and we will ensure to also share the link to the full report. Absolutely.
But the participants of this study are particularly RBC funded programs, and so RBC funded participants. But the survey is there, it's available. But if you have any questions about any measurement, or if your organization needs any support, we'll be happy to feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to support your organization and your work as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Valentina. I think we covered most of the question we received, but I will also make sure to share the comment with you, Valentina, so that you can also look at what people said and how they react during the presentation. But thank you so much really for sharing these great insights. It was interesting to see the difference between the study participant and the force and the labor force survey. And I'm sure our career development practitioners who are with us today will take your takeaway. They work very closely with both youth and the key stakeholders, the policymaker and employer. And of course, thank you so much, everyone, for your very, very great engagement. As I said, it was really good to see all those comments. And I'm just sharing my screen to remind you that we'll look forward to continuing our learning journey with RBC Future Lunch in the second webinar of the series, which will be in about a month from now, which is unusual for us. So on Monday, October 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll explore the scholarship ecosystem with our second expert, Farnaz Kenji. And before officially closing, I wanted to quickly share that SAREC is about to start another excellent webinar series in just 2 days from now, on Wednesday, September 25th, called Culturally Integrated Storytelling, Empowering Diverse Client for Life Transition, which will explore how storytelling can be a powerful tool for career practitioners at helping clients navigate life transition. So you can learn more and register by visiting our SAREC website. But with all that, let me now officially conclude. Thank you again, Valentina, for your presentation. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And I wish you a very good day, and looking forward to having you in the next months.
Thank you so much.